What's true for somebody that doesn't have any health issues and they've never been sick isn't going to be true for somebody that's been struggling with their health for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so meeting ourselves where we are, recognizing our innate ability to heal, and prioritizing the things that make sense for us instead of trying to mirror the things that we see online.
Welcome to the Medical Trauma Support Podcast, the show where we shine a light on the hidden impacts of medical trauma, explore tools for healing, and empower you to take control of your health journey. I'm Sarah, your host, a passionate advocate for trauma-informed care, somatic healing, and compassionate conversations. I'll bring you expert insights, healing strategies, and personal stories of resilience to help you feel seen, heard, and supported on your path to recovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Medical Trauma Support Podcast. I am super excited that today we have Leah Levitan with us, and Leah is the founder of Lymph Love Club. So welcome, Leah.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I have to tell people that I am a client of yours, and that's how I've met you. But
so totally biased interview. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. It kind of is. And I have learned a lot from your Lymph Love Club, but also from your Instagram. And I just happen to be lucky enough to live in Austin, so I could actually also see you in person. And I'm a little bit of, I don't want to say a nerd because that can sound negative, but I have to show you this. And I laminated this.
Heck yeah. There you go.
Because the things I've learned from you, I really do try to incorporate. I haven't been doing a lot of it lately. You can probably tell that I haven't done a lot of lymph facial massage lately.
Oh, me too. Don't worry.
But yeah, so I just want to share that because I want the listeners to know, like, I feel very lucky to have you here, and lucky that a lot more people will get to hear about your work. So thank you for being here. I thought we could start by you sharing with people how you got into this. Like, what led you to doing this work in the lymph world?
Yeah, well, I remember our conversation when we first met, and I brought up my mom, and so many little things have sort of put me down this very specific path that I feel like I didn't really choose, or maybe, I mean, if I did, I was just sort of being drawn to it and couldn't exactly explain why. But it did start when my mom got breast cancer back in 1998. There weren't a lot of resources, but she somehow found a group of people that were doing, I guess we could call them alternative, I prefer to say complementary approaches to that treatment. So she had a lumpectomy. She was lucky enough not to need chemotherapy or radiation or any lymph nodes removed from the body, which is definitely, those are things that can complicate the healing process. And so she went through this, and basically they gave her like a year to live, and she's doing great now. I think she'll be turning 77 this year.
That's
and
amazing.
it just goes to show, she always trusted her body, and she's a woman of faith. And so, she was just like, whatever happens, I'm detaching from the outcome, but I'm going to show up for my body. And so she was, my parents had a business, like a bakery. And so it was a lot of environmental things coming in, a lot of stress, a lot of sugar, a lot of just eating on the go. And so hers was environmental, not genetic. And so she really turned her life around. When she got that diagnosis, it was like, whoa, I need to be doing something different. So she was doing a lot of lifestyle changes and dry brushing and coffee enemas and all kinds of like kooky stuff. And she really made a great recovery. So I hadn't even really heard of the lymphatic system. I had never heard of dry brushing, So watching my mom doing some of these practices and going through this process was interesting, but it definitely reassured my faith in man's ability to heal. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I think that was sort of maybe the first thing that led
Yeah.
me down the path.
Well, yeah, you actually witnessed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And how long ago was that?
Well, she was diagnosed in 98. So I think she had her
Wow.
surgery shortly after diagnosis. We lived in a small town in Colorado with one stoplight. And so I do
Mm-hmm.
think that access to healthcare it was hard, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
she didn't have access to that like second, third, fourth opinion sometimes that we need.
Right.
It was basically just like, all right, we're gonna move to a larger city where she could get better care,
Mm-hmm.
and the support of that, you know, woo woo community or alternative community.
I love that. I love that. But I think also you bring something up that probably listeners and people who've experienced medical trauma may have experienced. And it's that sometimes you have to leave where you live to get the care that you need. And that adds like an extra layer of stress to people that are in that situation.
Yeah.
Um, but thank you for sharing that story. I think that's amazing that she had that support and that it's been such a positive outcome from what the original like prognosis was. But I know in the work that you do now, you work with a lot of people that are also going through their own, um, medical experiences. Maybe they've had a diagnosis, an autoimmune diagnosis, or a cancer diagnosis, or they've just come from surgery. And I'm really curious to hear more about like the work that you do to support people when they're in the experience or kind of in the process of having to have surgeries and figuring out what's going on with their body. Or also like after somebody is like, wow, I went through all this treatment and they're like, okay, now I need some support. That was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, each person is going to have a different experience. But what I love about working with the lymphatic system, so I'm a massage therapist and I'm certified in a type of lymphatic drainage. There are many different kinds. It's called the Vater method. This is a clinical method of manually moving the fluid just below the surface of the skin and using the client's nervous system and creating that parasympathetic shift. So
Mm-hmm.
that shift into rest and digest is what dilates the lymphatic vessels and increases the lymphatic circulation. So we're getting
Mm-hmm.
things moving. We're kind of using the nervous system as a pump, and then we're
Mm-hmm.
literally pumping the fluid just below the surface of the skin. It's If you compare it to massage, it's like the weirdest massage that you've ever had. So
It's
I
the
would
most
I would say it's not a
relaxing.
massage.
It's, I have to share this for people. The experience is one of the most relaxing experiences I've ever had. There's something about that really gentle touch that is so soothing.
Yeah. Well, we kind of live in like a more is better culture. So we think massage has to be deep or painful or intense in order to do something. But the lymphatic system responds best to gentle touch and light touch. And I think most body work modalities that really try to operate on like a brain-based approach, those are usually the ones that are getting really great results.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked about the different types of people that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's so many people coming in from all different walks. As a certified lymphedema therapist, I do see a lot of women coming in after breast cancer surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having lymph nodes removed from the body. Perhaps they're getting radiation, so their tissue is being radiated, it can be hard on our lymphatic vessels. It's hard on the lymphatic system, and lymph nodes, even just one being removed, can create a little bit of a lag in the system.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to learn about how the lymphatic system works. We know a lot, which is great, but there again, just why does somebody that's had one lymph node removed, why does that person get lymphedema when another person had 15 lymph nodes removed and didn't get lymphedema?
Yeah.
2 out of every 5 women with breast cancer will develop lymphedema in the first 5 years after treatment. And so after they've gone through this wild obscure journey called cancer. Then they
Mm-hmm.
come out the other side, and then their lymphatic system is working a little bit differently, and
Mm-hmm.
then it needs to be supported and sort of come back together, you know. And so a lot of lifestyle things, a lot of lymphatic drainage, and taking care, you know, of our nervous system, our fascia,
Mm-hmm.
and our lymph is
Mm-hmm.
really helping to reduce the risk. So
Mm-hmm.
helpful for people to come in and to seek out that type of work, especially after cancer.
Yeah.
But it's really helpful for everyone, and I think that has a lot to do with how connected the system is to almost every major system in the body. So it's
Yeah.
like we can't even think about it symptomatically, like, oh, is this good for that? The lymphatic system, like the fluid starts as the fluid that surrounds our cells. My
Mm.
friend calls it the cellular soup stock of the body, and that fluid is always being cleansed, and it's bathing the cells, and it's the lymphatic system that does that. So it's the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system that is feeding and nourishing our cells and
Mm-hmm.
picking up the waste and flushing things out when those cells poop and when
Mm-hmm.
environmental toxins find their way in. So our body's making toxins. It's generating them, you know, just with our own physiological function. Think like
Mm-hmm.
exhaust pipe on a car. We make waste.
Yeah.
But yeah, things are also coming in, which has a lot to do with some of the things that bring people in. You know, environmental toxins that are kind of tinkering with our hormones.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you know, a good reason to come in and get that stuff flushed, because we see a lot of hormone imbalance in my clinic too.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. So I'm also really just impacted by the conversation about the nervous system too, because that's like such a huge focus of what I do is
Me too.
yes, like helping people understand their nervous system and how I think we've known for many years that chronic stress impacts our health. And when we are constantly in like sympathetic charge and we're not able to get into that relaxation and get into that parasympathetic, it makes so much sense. Like when just talking about lymph alone, right? Like, oh, then our lymph isn't able to do its job of clearing out all that waste that we create and that kind of seeps in depending on our environment. Um, I just love like learning this extra layer to why the nervous system regulation is so important. It's more than just the nervous system. Like it's like we're one big thing and we have this tendency to try to kind of almost look at ourselves like robots, like there's this piece and this piece and this piece,
Yeah.
but really they're all so entwined. And when we take care of our nervous system, it's going to impact everything else beautifully. And when we take care of our lymph, it's going to impact everything else. And so I just think it's really beautiful that to learn more about these systems that are all working together
Yeah.
that we have
And
some
I,
control over.
oh yeah, I think a lot of us, and I know that I've fallen into this trap, is that we want to do these external things. We want to buy these tools, and we want to, because we're always being sold something
Hmm.
at any given time. And so a lot of times, you know, people come in and they're like, I dry brush, I use a rebounder, I you know, walk every day, I'm eating everything that I'm supposed to be eating. I feel like everything's like dialed in.
Hmm.
But then they've got this stress, you know, this low level of constant stress
Right.
that just can impact our overall healing. So,
Yes,
you
and
know,
trauma, right?
yeah.
So oftentimes what happens is we're doing all of the things, but maybe we have a complex trauma history from childhood, or we have a medical trauma history and we're doing all these things, but that experience is so scary to touch or to tap into, but that's there.
Yeah.
That's like hanging out. And so um that's an important piece of things
Yeah.
is being with that, um, and doing the things that we need to do to start to process that and let go of it a little bit, because it hangs out. If we don't
Yeah.
sit with it, it's hanging out with us.
And those are often, I feel like trauma is often the root of why we lack consistency in our self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really hard to show up for ourselves if we're living in a body that we hate or a
Mm-hmm.
body that we don't trust.
Right.
Um, which makes sense. It's totally valid to feel, you know, to feel like your body is working against you, especially if you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with like an autoimmune condition where you're
Right.
like, my body is attacking itself. I always tell my autoimmune clients, I'm like, your body's doing everything that it can to try to recalibrate. It really
Yes.
is.
Yes.
And it's never attacking you. It's always trying to serve you. And just sometimes the body can get it wrong, you know?
Yeah, it can get confused.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do. I feel like it's always trying to protect us. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that protection can result in some maladaptive coping techniques, or maybe you
It'll
could call them
guess.
short-term
Yeah.
coping techniques. Um, but yeah, like to realize that it's always in service of us, and our body's always doing what it thinks is the best thing to keep us alive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're gonna like do a little bit of this. Is that gonna influence that? I said that sometimes the body gets it wrong, but I want to rewind that and say what I meant to say was that it just it will guess, but
Yeah,
it never does anything without reason.
right. Right. And, talking about autoimmune, I know so many people are living with autoimmune conditions. And what does it look like for somebody who comes in to see you? Or maybe they don't live in Austin and they can't come in to see you, but they're able to be a part of your Lymph Love Club. Like, what are some ways that you teach them to support themselves in this time?
That's a great question. So specifically for autoimmune, I feel like there's always that conversation about like let's go over the nervous system basics. Do
Mm-hmm.
you know how that works? And we kind of go into some of those layers about communicating safety to our body and what that means,
Mm-hmm.
because the more that we communicate safety, the more expansion we have into our healing. I think
Mm-hmm.
it starts checking some boxes for us because it's anti-inflammatory. Just,
Right.
I mean, lymphatic work in general is innately anti-inflammatory because through this fluid system that runs right alongside the cardiovascular system, what's flowing through that system is like healing. Think of it as like healing rivers. They
Mm-hmm.
have immune cells inside that fluid that's circulating, and then in our lymph nodes, those are creating immune, like storing immune cells as well. And so if you've ever had like lymph nodes swell, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times with autoimmune, people are dealing with like systemic inflammation. And so they'll
Mm-hmm.
have one or more lymph node clusters, kind of like sore, tender, especially like
Mm-hmm.
in the armpits, sometimes in the neck. And that's a good indication that from like a fascial standpoint, the vagus nerve might be like a little bit jammed up. And a third of the lymph nodes are located in our head and neck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one of those things where we're talking about that connection, that nervous system and lymphatic connection, because
Mm-hmm.
it's the nervous system that decides what response is valid, right? In that
Right.
moment, how do we respond? How does the body respond, or how does it choose?
Yeah, and it's a
And
huge part of the inflammatory cytokines, right? Like the vagus nerve has a big role in that as well.
mhm. Yeah, so it's like the way that our immune system works is like it's our nervous system and our lymphatic system that's sort of making sure that things are functioning here. And so we're talking about nervous system regulation. We're talking about how, like, what are some of the ways that we can get this system moving and stimulated? Because
Mm-hmm.
there is a pump for the lymphatic system, but it's very slow. It's not known for its speed. I'll tell you that much. It might beat like 10 to 12 beats per minute, very slow pulse that kind of
Mm-hmm.
brings the fluid through the pipes. But it's really our diaphragm and muscle activation and fascia that is pumping our lymphatic fluid. So, I mean, as you know, movement is information to our brain, which is information to the cells in our body, which tells them how to respond. Maybe it's to respond in alignment, or to shed cells, or to recycle parts of them and to come back stronger. So keeping everything moving, keeping that cellular soup stock nice and clean is a good like intro to healing the body, in the sense of, helping with some of these symptoms that people are dealing with. It can really check a lot of boxes for people.
Yeah, and you talked about the lymph pump. Where is that? Like, where is the lymph pump?
Oh, it's like in the lymphatic vessels themselves. I'm very crafty, and I intend on creating a three-dimensional model of a lymphatic vessel.
Oh,
But
cool.
if you just imagine, so the lymphatic vessels are like little functioning units. I don't know if you can see my hands here. They're like
Yes.
little functioning units, and they have smooth muscle that lines the inside of the vessels. This smooth muscle is different than like our skeletal muscle in the sense that our nervous system is activating this muscle, not us, not
Mm-hmm.
movement. And so it's involuntary, and so it's just like propelling the fluid through the lymphatic vessel. And then there's like a little flaps that divide these functioning units of the vessel, and our veins are shaped like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Our veins have little flaps to prevent backflow. But yeah, it's the diaphragm rising and lowering with every inhale and exhale that's really stroking the largest main lymphatic duct that sits right on the front of our spine, and carries fluid from our lower body as well as our gastrointestinal tract and everything in our abdominal compartment. It has to pass right through our diaphragm, and so that muscle is just like, come on, baby, here we go, and
Yeah.
it keeps it going.
Well, something that I love about that is, a lot of people who've experienced like stressful medical situations or procedures, like a lot of times we lose ability, right? We may lose our ability to walk, or, so the rebounding, the walking, the running is no longer possible, but we can still do deep breathing to move lymph, which is also
Mm-hmm.
that same breath is also going to help our nervous system get more into a parasympathetic state. So I think for people listening that are like, well, I can't rebound anymore, like I can't go for a walk, you can still benefit your lymph system and your nervous system with deep breathing.
Totally. I feel like we've been given can'ts our whole life. We have to really focus on the things that we can do,
Yeah.
because that's the mindset that is going to propel us forward. Is
Hmm.
like every small effort that we make that makes sense for our body and is true for us. What's true for somebody that doesn't have any health issues and they've never been sick isn't going to be true for somebody that's been struggling with their health for a long time.
Hmm.
And so meeting ourselves where we are, recognizing our innate ability to heal, and prioritizing the things that make sense for us instead of trying to mirror the things that we see online. Oh, well, the internet's telling me that I need to buy a rebounder. If I don't buy a rebounder, I can't take care of my lymph.
Hmm.
But I have this saying that I use all the time it's the best things in lymph are free. For real. And so um, that's where we really almost create like a superpower in our self-care, is when we're
Hmm.
not reliant on external tools, because we can't
Yeah.
always take our tools with us. Not
Yeah.
every tool is going to be right for us. And
Hmm.
putting our hands on our body is really powerful. Just as like
For so many reasons.
a massage therapist that like didn't know my body at all for most of my adult life,
Yeah.
um, it's pretty wild now, to be like working with my body and communicating with it. It's been really powerful for me.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. As somebody who, through my own healing, I've come into this like world of, you know, therapy, nervous system regulation. It's that personal journey is so informative. Like lived experience really matters. And I think oftentimes in like the culture that we live in, there's this big focus on like credentials and schooling. And yes, those things matter. So you know what you're doing. But there is something really special, I think, that comes from having lived experience and having walked down a challenging path. And you have the lived experience of knowing I was in a really dark hole and I was able to climb out of it enough to be able to like see other people down in the hole and be like, hey, I'm here. There are
The
things that
view's
you can
great.
do.
The view's great. Come on up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And there are other people who've done it, right? Because it can feel, when you're in that darkness, it can feel like I'll never feel better. And so to see somebody else who's been like, I've been there, I've been in that darkness, and I'm like, I'm seeing the light right now. So like, let me help you. Like, here are some things you can do. And I know it's really challenging for people who are in that dark space to even take a step forward. But my hope is that if anyone listening is feeling like that right now, that they're going to feel a little glimmer of hope, you know, when they're hearing what you're talking about. And then I'm super excited because you're going to show us a practice too. There's, you know, I shared this this little handout that you made for your Lymph Love Club. And you talked about not having to buy anything, and like you can use your hands and you can use what you have at home. And so many of these things are free that you have on this list, you know, and it's like legs up the wall plus deep breathing. You don't need anything for that.
It's too simple, okay? People don't want
Right.
to do that. That's
Right.
not going to do anything. No.
I know. The funny thing is, like, I know these things. How often do you think I put my legs up the wall? Like, not as often as I should. But when I
Yeah.
do it, I feel really good. And I'm like, that's right. Why don't I do that more often? But yeah, like an Epsom salt bath, grounding yourself in with the earth, like feeling sunshine on your face or your body. Um, I just, those things are simple and they're free. And sometimes it just takes somebody kind of reminding you, like, oh, you have this power to feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it is a lot easier when we have a little more understanding of our body from
Mm-hmm.
like a physics perspective too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like how our bodies have evolved to function as they do, and the life that we live now, this modern life that we live, it's so different, but it hasn't. This is very new, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's very new to we evolved under the sun, and now it's
Right.
hard. It's like we might go days without spending time out in the sun. What does
Right.
that do when our skin actually has photoreceptors in it that are there to accept that light, capture that light, and to turn it into something
Mm-hmm.
um, that is a driver for physiological function in the body. It's
Yeah.
like once you start like learning this stuff, and the lymphatic system is like most active when we're in deep sleep. It's
Mm-hmm.
like cleansing the brain as we're sleeping. And so then you start taking a look at like, ooh, man, I feel like I scroll on my cell phone late into the night looking for answers looking for answers to my problems.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we just kind of forget the foundations. I've been that person. I can't tell you how many nights I've laid awake and been like, let me just get on Reddit and see who's talking about what in this support group, see
Yeah.
what's helping people. And it is great to learn and continue our education and always look for ways that we can be helpers and in service to our body. But I
Mm-hmm.
do find that the basics are really where a lot of that magic happens. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we shift our perspective and we look inward, we look inward instead of outward.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times our body will tell us what it needs. And we're like,
Yes.
oh, I'm just not getting enough, or I'm not prioritizing sleep, because sleep hygiene is a thing. And movement, however we can get it, it's like movement and exercise are two very different things. And I think a lot of times when we're told that, hey, we need to exercise for our health, we need to take care of our body, you got to move, move, move. And so just giving ourselves permission, especially people that have a chronic illness or a lot of trauma, to meet ourselves where we are and to say, okay, maybe I don't want to train like a world record holder. Cool.
Right.
Like, great. I hope not, because you don't need to. But we do need to honor our body's requirements for foundational things like circulation and like keeping things moving, because that is how, our cells get bathed and fed. So taking care of our cellular health is taking care of our lymphatic health and our hormone health and our neurological health and our gastrointestinal health, all the health.
Right. And, the sleep thing is so challenging for many people who have experienced medical trauma and other kinds of trauma is, again, when we're in that sympathetic space and our body's shooting out cortisol, getting into that deep sleep where the lymph is clearing things out is really challenging.
Yeah.
And
And it
so
comes later. It comes later, It's like we can't do everything all at once. And so it's like, yeah, if we're just getting started with like even acknowledging our nervous system and that it just needs to be heard, it doesn't need to be healed. It's just responding to its environment. When we realize that the environment is us. I'm actually reading a book right now in the Lymph Love Club book club, where we meet every Sunday. We're doing The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton.
Yes.
And we're like 1.5 chapters in, and I'm already like, whoa, like the power of our thought. I mean, I knew that the power of thought was compelling. Yes. But when you realize how compelling it is, you're like, wow, how could I ever stress about like not like gua shaing and dry brushing and sitting on a vibration plate and doing all this stuff, all the fancy things. It's like, oh yeah, I think maybe I just need to learn how to be comfortable slowing down a little bit or feel safe slowing down a little bit so that I can even hear my body and learn to communicate with it so that I know what emotions are supposed to feel like. Emotions start in the body. And a lot of times people are very disconnected from that, and myself included, because we spend so much time up here in the penthouse, right behind our eyes.
Right? Yeah. A lot of times I think that is safe because trauma happens to our body. And, we're talking about medical trauma that happens to our body. And so sometimes because of that overwhelming experience, it's like, I'm sorry, no, I have no interest in going back into the body. It is not a safe place. This horrible thing happened there. But I believe fully that in order to heal, we do have to return to a relationship to our body. I love the phrase befriending our bodies again. So it's and I, for people listening who are in this place where they're like, nope, I don't want to do that, or maybe I want to do it but I'm terrified. You don't jump in with both feet. It's a gentle, slow, loving process in order to not re-traumatize yourself. Like you go slow and gently, and it really is just about like when you have a new friend or a friend that you haven't seen in 3 years, right? Just go have lunch or maybe get a cup of coffee even, and just listen to them. Maybe it's a 10-minute listening. But it's gentle. It's not like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in 3 years. Let's go on a 2-week vacation together and share a room. It's like, let's like take it slow. Let's be gentle.
I love that.
Yeah. We're rebuilding this relationship. And so, yeah, I think that that's so important for any kind of healing. And it just sounds like these same things are so beneficial to our whole body, like our lymph, like you said. Yeah. And I'm curious, I know that you're going to walk us through a practice, which I'm very excited about, but I'm curious about anxiety. Like, do you have people who come to you specifically because they are just feel like they're going to crawl out of their skin? They're so anxious.
Sometimes, but that can be a little bit a little bit iffy. I prefer when people are coming in that they've already had, I would say like a year of therapy,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, if we're focusing on like anxiety, if we're
Yeah.
trying to clear physical if we're trying to clear trauma from the physical body,
Mm-hmm.
it is really helpful to work with somebody that really specializes in that. So
Mm-hmm.
luckily we have a really great therapy practice just down the street. All 16 of their providers have additional training in somatic experiencing. And so to be able to send somebody to a psychotherapist and to say, hey, let's start with the foundation and then come back and see us.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have been in that situation where somebody's come in, they've heard it's great, they want to try it, but they actually did have like a nervous system response, where they had a reaction that released some things that was very
Mm-hmm.
intense. And so at
Mm-hmm.
that point, that's where I'm just dropping a little business card and the little gift bag that they get on the first
Mm-hmm.
visit. And so that way they're getting, some guidance that is supported from a multidimensional mindset. It's
Yeah.
just, it's got to be, we need a team. Like we often need a team of
Yes.
people. And so it's like the lymphatic work is not a silver bullet. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, people can come in and get lymphatic work to address anxiety, but are they getting to the root of their anxiety? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that a 1 hour session once a month is going to do that for somebody, because it requires awareness. And
Yeah.
sometimes that awareness, whether it's body awareness or even just acknowledging our truth so that we
Mm-hmm.
can live more authentically, that requires a little bit of like, we got to flush it out a little bit.
Yeah, and the somatic experiencing practitioners, that somatic experiencing work helps you to befriend your body. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really gentle. I love somatic experiencing, and it is like that's a beautiful way if you are scared to feel anything in your body. Finding a therapist who is a somatic experiencing practitioner, you'll know because they have an SEP as behind their name, that they're very well trained in helping you to, I'm letting listeners know, helping you to tap into your body and start to listen to the wisdom of your body. I love that.
Awesome.
Well,
There's a
Leah,
great there's a great book too. Can I drop that in real quick?
yes.
So if a lot of us are familiar, well, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone, but so many of us are familiar with the concept of like our brain knowing where we are in space, putting one
Mm-hmm.
foot in front of the other and just being able to move around.
Mm-hmm.
This is known as proprioception.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a seventh sense, if you will, and it's called interoception.
Mm-hmm.
Interoception is our sense of self. And so our interoception can be very low, especially in certain conditions like
Mm-hmm.
complex PTSD, eating disorders, all kinds of things can bring this down. And a really great book that I read not too long ago, it's called How to Change Your Body by Saga Briggs. And
Mm-hmm.
it is it's all about interoception, the research that we have so far. And then she is interviewing all of these incredible experts across all different types of conditions
Wow.
and how they use just the power of tapping into that interoception in order to really put people in their body. So it's just a great resource that I wanted to share before we moved on.
Thank you so much. I have not read that book, and I will absolutely be reading that book, and I'll put a link in the show notes so people can find that book. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing that. I'll be
You'll
reading
love
that
it. You'll
soon.
love it. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, but yeah, so you offered to lead our listeners and the people watching the video through a practice, a lymph practice, and I'm very excited about it.
Yes. Yeah. I'm honored to share it by this is a technique by one of my virtual mentors. His name is Dr. Perry Nicholston. In honor of him and sharing his work and spreading his work, I wouldn't be here without him. Because when I started learning from him, I couldn't really unsee the magic of the lymphatic system. So I blame him. I call him daddy, because he's like, my dad's age and just the cutest nerdy guy that you ever met. He's like a eccentric chiropractor from New Jersey, and he's amazing, and his energy is so deeply healing. Follow him. Stop Chasing Pain is where you can find him online. So his technique is called the Big Six, and this is where these are the 6 lymphatic choke points or areas of importance to our lymphatic system. Just a little backstory: we have to go in a certain order because the lymphatic system is a pressure system. So when you're stimulating the lymphatic system, think of it as like you can't push a river. You have to go with the flow. So the lowest point of pressure in the body is just behind and below the collarbones. This is known as the terminus. But so this is where all of our lymphatic fluid goes back into circulation after it's been cleaned and filtered by our lymph nodes. So it goes back into our bloodstream as the liquid component of our blood, which is plasma. Sure, you've heard of plasma. So point number 1 is the collarbones there, and that's going to start creating a vacuum that pulls lymphatic fluid into circulation. Point number 2 is the lateral sides of the neck, just below the ear. This is where our vagus nerve exits the spine, and so we're sort of stimulating this, and then some major lymph node clusters on the sides of the neck. Point number 3 is the axillary lymph node clusters in each armpit. We've got about 18 to like 50. Every person's different. We're not IKEA furniture, but they are stationed in our shoulders so that every time we move our arms, we're pumping that system. Point number 4 is the abdomen. Point number 5 is the hip creases. And point number 6 is the inguinal lymph nodes. So we're going to rub, slap, and tap these areas in that order. Let's go.
All right.
I'm going to stand here. All right. So point number 1, let me get my microphone here. So point number 1, we're going to just crisscross your hands over your collarbones and start pressing down into that triangular space. You can use a decent amount of pressure here. It shouldn't be painful or anything, but just pressing down in here. If it feels a little bit too intense to do both sides at once, you can do one side and then the other. So about 10-15 seconds is all you need. Now take your fingertips, you can do 2 or 3 fingers, and just go below about an inch below the ear, and just do some little circular rubbing, very gentle pressure here. You might even feel, you might even start feeling like you've got an increase of saliva. That's a great indication that you're pushing your body into the parasympathetic, which is where we want to be, baby. That's where we heal. And take a couple nice breaths to really tap into that parasympathetic response. All right, now we're moving down to our axillary clusters. So you can just rub in this general area. We have some lymph nodes in the bicep, some in the apex of the armpit, and then as well as the rib cage along the lateral portion of the breast. So you can work this whole area. And I mean, do it however you want to. Like, it shouldn't cause pain, but there's no wrong way to do it. Like I said, we're just stimulating this area. Moving on to the other side. Give it a little mush, give it a little squish. You got it. Staying with your breath. Trying to take some nice deep belly breaths using that diaphragm. Point number 4, I like to stack one hand over the other right on top of the belly button. And you can do some nice circular motions here in one direction and then circular motions in the other direction. So here we're also stimulating our vagus nerve. So this is stimulating digestion, stimulating relaxation, and really creating some blood and lymph flow for our guts, our reproductive organs, all of it. And if you wanted, I like to do a little slapping, just a little tapping. It's a little vibration. Our lymph loves vibration. Point number 5 is the hip creases. So we've got clusters of lymph nodes here so that every time we walk, they get a little scrub-a-dub. So give them a little circular rubbing here, just along the underwear line. You can go in one direction and then the other. No wrong answers. We just got to do it in the right order. And then you give that a little slap. And then point number 6, just below and above the knees, just rubbing in this area, very helpful. And then the very last thing that we do after we get everything opened up, now we've got the lymphatic system stimulated, but we do need to create a little bit of vibration to propel that lymph. And so just doing a little bit of gentle rebounding on the balls of your feet is good.
Are your heels hitting the ground?
So it's a choose your adventure situation. You can gently bounce and make it low impact where your heels aren't touching the ground, or you can push your weight into your heels and try to really send a more intense shockwave up your body. So if you don't have any joint issues and you feel like you just need a little bit more oomph, I would say bouncing onto the heels and pushing that weight into the heels is great. That more closely resembles Qigong, which I love. There's a lot of connection between Eastern medicine and the way that I feel about healing, and the way that like just our body's wisdom. And so a lot of Eastern things like Qigong, they really honor the lymphatic system. So Qigong is a good thing to do for lymph love.
Amazing. The other thing too is one of the practices that I've taught people if they're feeling really anxious, like at a medical appointment, is to go up on their toes and drop on their heels, and a nice drop, like you're really feeling it, which is, something you just shared. So that's helping your lymph too. I guess it's a nervous system and lymph are so intertwined that it makes a lot of sense that it would benefit both. Leah, this has been amazing. I'm so thankful that you showed us the big 6. And my guess is that people that are listening are going to want to know how they could, get in contact with you or learn more from you. And can you let listeners know how they can engage with you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, yes, we have a practice in Austin and I'd love to see you, but Austin is one very small place on this earth. And so in an effort to really try to help people connect with this system and learn how to take care of it, I've created a little virtual space for us to do that together as a community. And so it's the literal Lymph Love Club. And that is where we meet once a week to do some lymphatic movement that targets a different area of the body. I also share just little tidbits, whether it's in the form of a written post or like a tutorial, just things that are helping us always learn more. And it's not just lymphatic stuff. There's a lot of fascial stuff and nervous system because it's all connected, as you know. And yeah, we have a book club on Sundays. We meet on Saturdays, and lymphaloveclub.com get you there.
Yes, I'll put that in the show notes. And I'm in the Lymph Love Club. And so it's very cool. Like I wish I could attend all of the different things that you do, because you also bring in like cool speakers.
Yeah, Dr. Perry's been on one of the episodes.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to interview him.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. And yeah, I know that there are like recorded videos. So if you can't make it live, you can go back and watch them. And there are different lymph for the face. I was able to do that one live, and that was so relaxing too. It was so relaxing to do that. There's like dry brushing, like 101, or I can't remember the exact name of it, which I want to go back and do. So yeah, I highly recommend it as well. It's a really cool group.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I just love connecting with people, and it can feel so overwhelming to be trying to navigate your healing when it's even like just difficult to leave your house or
right.
And the community is not about doing more stuff. It's not. It's really not. I think a lot of people think, they get overwhelmed if it's like there's too much going on. I'll never be able to sift through it all. And we just we come into that space to feel seen, heard, and held, and to support each other, and to just do what we can and focus
Mm-hmm.
on what we can do. And sometimes that's just like, hey, maybe it's just the book club that I'm participating in, or I just have questions for you and want to, there's a little designated area where people can ask questions. And so if you just kind of need some support and some guidance, that's a good
Mm-hmm.
option. Love to have
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and also just for like the work that you're putting out into the world. And I'm also going to put your Instagram account in the show notes because you have it's such a fun account too. Like it's informative, but also it's just fun.
Yeah, the
Um,
talking anatomy characters really do it for me. Or
yeah. So I'll put that there. Thank you so much for being here.
thank you so much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Medical Trauma Support Podcast. If you are looking for some tips to soothe your own nervous system, you can go to my website and find a free guide to doing that. The website is medicaltraumasupport.com.